Okay, now in this section, we would like to add scikit.io into our application. So this is the current state what we have. We had an Express server that is connected to our database, which is MongoDB. And then we had different users in our application. Now, if this user currently wants to send a message to his friend, what is going to happen is that he is going to send a request to our server, and we will take that message and send it to the database. But we are not going to send that message back to this user. If this user wants to see that message, he just needs to refresh his page. But this is not optimal and this is not real time. And to be able to fix this, we will add another server which is going to be scikit server, and we will just add it on top of our Express server. Now in this way, we will be able to just send the message to our server. It is going to save it to the database, and then just immediately it is gonna send it back to this user. And now this user didn't need to refresh his page. And this communication is now just real time. And this is possible just because of the scikit.io library. So now that we know the workflow, let's just try to implement that. Okay, so this is where we left our application. We had some changes and I have committed them. Now we would like to create a scikit server that's going to be inside the backend folder. So we'll have this scikit, and then we'll have a file called scikit.js. And at the beginning of this course, we have installed this package, which is scikit.io, and it is time to use it. Now we'll get the server from this package. Let's say server from scikit.io, and then we'll get the HTTP from HTTP, which is a Node.js built-in Node.js module, and then we'll get the Express from Express. And the reason that we have this Express, we will actually delete it from here and create it here. Okay, and then we'll say export this app, and we will just import it. So get this from the scikit.js file, and I think we'll understand the reason in a second. Now we have this Express app. We would like to have a server that is going to be an HTTP server, and we will pass this Express app into it. And then we will have IO, that's going to be new server, and we will pass our server into it. Now what we see here is basically we have done this. So we had the Express server, and on top of it we have added the scikit server. So that's how we would do it, and from this file we will export the IO and server. Now scikit gives us some course errors. That's why we could go here and just say course, and that's going to be an object. We'll just say origin. We could put an array, and the first value could be our front-end application. And for the methods, we could say that's going to be get and post. And here we could listen for connections, and this is how you would do it in scikit. So io.on connection, we're going to get a callback, which is scikit. So this is going to be the user that is connected, and this scikit has ID and different properties, but most of the time you use ID. So we will say console log a user connected, and we could maybe show the scikit ID next to it. And then how are we going to check for disconnections? We could use scikit.on, and we'll say disconnect. We'll just console log a user disconnected, and we could show the scikit ID. And so here I'll just put a comment. So here's the comment: scikit.on method is used to listen to the events, and this can be used both on client and on the server side. So we'll be using the scikit.on on our front end as well in the incoming minutes. Now that's going to be our minimal setup, at least for now. We could save this. So here we are listening for connections, and we just console log it in our server, and same thing goes for disconnections. So we are going to go here, and we need to just update this with the server that we have created. So we have the app and server that is coming from this file, and that's going to be it for our backend, at least for now. So let's do the setup for our front end. We will have inside the source, inside the inside the context, we will have scikit context.jsx file, and here we'll create that scikit context. Now let's try to create it. So we'll say export const scikit context, and we will call this, that is coming from React. We cannot get auto imports, so let's say create context from React, and then we'll say export const. We need to just create a provider, so I'll say scikit context provider, and that's gonna take the children, and we would like to just return the scikit context provider. The value could be empty for now, and inside we will just put our children. So here we'll say children. And now let's save this file. We're gonna go into the main.jsx and wrap our application with scikit context provider, and we'll put the app inside. Now let's save this file, and we're gonna go here and we'll have a couple of states. So const scikit set scikit, and that's gonna be our scikit connection, and we would like to import use state. So use state as well as the use effect. So by default our connection is null, and we would like to have the online users. That's something that we'll be looking in a second. And then I think we could now initialize the use effect. So here we need to install another package. So let's go into the front end. So inside the root, cd into the front end, and you'd like to install a package called scikit-io-client. Now we have used this scikit-io for backend. This is the backend package, and this is for client, so that we could have some communication to our scikit server. Now inside the use effect, let's get the first auth user from our use auth context, and inside the use effect we will say if there is an authenticated user, then we would like to create a connection. So let's say scikit, we would like to get the IO method, so import IO from scikit-io client, and then we would like to pass our backend URL, which is localhost 5000 port. Now we're gonna have an object, but for now we could skip that, and we will say set this scikit. So once this connection completed, set this scikit state to this connection, and then what we can do in the else case, if there is not authenticated users, if this is empty, then we'll hit the else check, and we'll like to close the existing scikit connection. So we could say if there is a scikit connection, then we just want to scikit.close and then set this state to be null. And for performance reasons, we could also say return. So that's going to be our cleanup function. I'll just say scikit.close, and this will close the scikit connection when the component is unmounted. So with this, I think we could save now, and hopefully it should work. So we would like to here pass the scikit as well as the online users, and we'll be using those values later in our application. Now let's save, and in our backend, in the console, we cannot see anything for now. Let's try to log in. Now I am logged in as Bob, and here in the console we cannot see anything. Let's refresh. Now here it says a user connected, and this is the scikit ID that we have. Now how are we going to get the online user status? For this, inside our backend we're going to have an object. So let's say const user scikit map, and that's going to be an object where we'll have the user ID as being the key, and then scikit ID will be the value. So I'll just put this as a comment. Now when we logged in, we would like to take the user ID, and for this we could send it as an argument. So here we'll say query, we would like to have the user ID. That's going to be authenticated user's ID, and to be able to get this ID, let's first save this file. We're going to go into the scikit, and here we'll just say const user ID, where we could say scikit.handshake.query and .user ID. So we got into the query and got the user ID now. So we'll say if this user ID is not equal to undefined value, then we would like to just set it into this user scikit map. So I will say user scikit map user ID will be equal to this scikit.id. And since we updated this user scikit map, we would like to send an event to all connected clients. So for this, we will be using io.emit. So again, I'll just put a comment here. So here's my comment. io.emit is used to send events to all connected clients. So we could give any name here. I'll just say get online users, and we will just pass this object.keys of this user scikit map. So whenever a user connects, it will immediately send this who is online and who is offline, and we can grab it with this event name. So that's gonna be it for now, and let's do the same thing when a user disconnects. So once we disconnect, we will just delete this user ID from the user scikit map. And since we updated this, now we would like to again call this io.emit. And so I will just copy this line and then paste it. So again, because we disconnected, we delete that from the scikit map, and this has been updated. Now we would like to send it to the all clients. So we call io.emit with this event name. So we'll be using this event name to get the online users in the client. So here I'll just save this file, and we will say once we connected, we would like to see who is online and who is not. So we will say scikit.on, and we'll just say get online users. Now this is gonna return us the users, and we'll just say set online users to these users. And here we can see now scikit.on can be used both in the client and on the server, and it is used to listen to the events just like we said here. So I will copy this command and paste it to here as well, just in case if you want to have it. So now with this setup, we are able to use the online users in our application, and we can just show it in our sidebar. So here let's go and create a hook so that we could consume this just like we did right here. So I will copy this and just paste it here. I'll say export const use scikit context, and we'll say use context. It is coming from React, and then we will pass this scikit context into it, and we could delete this export. So what we have done here is basically the same thing that we do here. So we have created the context, and then to be able to consume it, we created this hook which calls the use context hook from React. Now in order to see this online status, we're going to go into the conversation component. So let's say conversation.jsx, and here we'll get the online users. So let's say const online users from use scikit context, and we could have this const is online variable where we'll just say online users if it includes the conversation._id. So if this is the case, then it means this user is online, and we could use this value to show this online status. So I will put curly braces, backticks, and again backticks, curly braces. I will delete this online, and I'll say if is online, we would like to add the online class, but else we don't want to add it. So let's save. Hopefully that's gonna work. So now no one is online. Here we can see, and here this value is wrong. Let's fix it. So that was inside the message container, I believe. Okay, so here if there is no chat selected, we just put this hard-coded value, but we would like to update it with auth context's value, right? So I'll just say auth user, and we will just show the full name. So auth user dot full name. If we save, now it's gonna say welcome Bob Doe, and I'll just open up a new tab. So that's gonna be in incognito mode. Let's visit this login page, and I'll just shrink this a bit. And here I'll just log in as Jane. So Jane Doe, and the password was from 1 to 6. And if we now log in, okay, so it didn't work. So let's see, I think we're missing something. So let's close this first. So we had the scikit context. Once we connected, we got the online users, and oh, okay, we didn't update here. So we'll just say auth user. Whenever this changes, run this use effect. So that was the only part that we were missing. Now let's save and let's try to do it again. and it's already updated, but I just want to see that from scratch. Now I will log out from this account. This is Jane. If I click to that, now Jane is offline, and the reason is inside our scikit.js, this function has run, and then we deleted that from our scikit map and we just send it to every client. And that's why we cannot see that online status. So if we just log in again, so this time I'll just log in as Daisy. If I click the login, that's gonna update immediately. And here we can see Bob is also online. If I just log out from this account, so I'll just log out, and here we can see Bob is not online anymore. So now that we have the online users functionality out of the way, we would like to add the next thing, which is gonna be so real-time messages. For this, let's go into our backend, and specifically for the scikit.js, we are gonna add a function. So maybe just above here, let's say const and export it, because we'll be using it in a controller. So we'll say get receiver scikit ID, and here we'll pass a receiver ID. That's going to be the user ID, and that's going to give us the scikit ID of that user, and we'll see why. Now let's say return from this map the scikit ID. So that's going to give us the user scikit ID when we pass this receiver ID. Okay, so we're going to save this file, and we're going to go into the message controller now. So when we sent the message that was inside this function, and we said that we will add scikit.io functionality into here, and now it is time to do it. And actually, let's take all these into here, and we'll add the scikit.io here. So we take the message, save it into our database, and as well as the conversation. Here we can see, now that the message is in the database, let's save it, let's send it to the other user. And for this, we can use a method, but first let's get the receiver scikit ID. So I'll say const receiver scikit ID, and we will call this function. So get receiver scikit ID, and this will be the receiver ID. So we will say if this user is online, so we'll say if receiver scikit ID, if it is not undefined, we'll hit this if check, and io dot, instead of emit, we will use io dot to, and then we'll use emit. Now it's because we only want to send the event to this user. So we'll say io dot to receiver scikit ID dot emit, and we could have this new message event, and we will send the new message. So I'll just put a comment here. So here is the comment io.to, so the scikit ID.emit. This method is used to send events to a specific client. So it is not like this io.emit where we just send it to every user, but instead only to one specific client. Now with that, this is going to be it for scikit message functionality. We take the message, save it to our database, and then just send it to this user with this new message event name. And now it is time to catch it in our client. So I will create a hook for this. Let's first save this file, and we could close all these and shrink this. We're gonna go into the hooks, and I will create this as use listen messages.js. And now it is time to just create this hook. So again, RAFCE as we do always, and instead of returning this, actually I think we are not gonna return anything. It's because we will be listening for messages. So we would like to get the scikit from our context. So let's say use scikit context, and that was returning the online users as well as the scikit. And we'll take this value and we'll say const get the messages as well as the set messages function from use conversation. That was the Zustand global state that we have. Now inside the use effect, we will just listen for it. So when we say we would like to listen for an event, the only thing that I can think of is scikit.on method. And let's import this use effect from React. And I'll just put it at the top. Okay, so we want to listen for events, and as we said before, we would like to use socket.on method. And just in case this is empty, let's put a question mark so that our application doesn't crash. So we are going to be listening for new message event, and we will take the new message as an argument inside this callback. Now we'll be doing a couple of things here. For now, let's just say set messages. We will add all previous messages, and then new message gonna be at the end. Now here under this, we'll say return. We would like to just inside this cleanup function, we will say socket.off this new message event. So when this component unmounts, we don't really want to listen for this. And this is something really necessary that you need to add, and I will explain that in a second. So here we need to add the socket, the set messages, as well as the messages. And if we just call this hook inside the, I think, messages. Okay, so we'll just call this hook use listen messages. Now, this will basically listen for any incoming messages from the socket. Let's save and let's test it out now. I will go here and just log in as Bob. And then I will open up a new tab and I will log in as Jane from here. Okay, now Jane and Bob are online, and let me just put this tabs side by side. Now I will select this conversation and select this one. Now from here, Bob will say, "Hey Jane." And now if we send it, here we can see it is immediately being shown here. It's because we are listening for messages. And I'll just say, "Hey Bob." And here we can see it is immediately has been shown. It's because we are listening for messages inside this use effect. And now what I would like to do when there is a new message. So when there is a new message, I'll just say, "Hey." So I would like this message to just shake a little bit. And for this, we'll add a shake class, and that's gonna have some animation in CSS. So for this, we'll just add one class and one animation in our index.css file. So open up the index.css file and just paste this value or this classes that you can get from the GitHub repo. We have a shake class that is shake animation on horizontal direction. And this is something that, again, you can just get it from ChatGPT. And we're gonna save this file, and we will say inside this use listen messages. So once there is a new message, we would like to say this message should shake. So a new message dot should shake will be equal to true. And then in our message component, we will add a class. We'll say const should shake. Actually, let's say shake class. And we will say if message should shake, then we will add this shake class, but else we will not add it. So we'll just skip that. And this is something that we only add for incoming messages. So real-time messages, we add this shake class. And inside this chat bubble, here we could just say, so $, curly braces, add the shake class. Now let's save this and test it out. So here I'll just send another message, "Hey," and if I send it, now here we can see we have this shake animation that is going on. And if we send from here, it is gonna be here, message will be here, and here it just shakes, and I think this looks a lot cleaner. And the very last thing that we'd like to do is just play a sound. That's gonna be notification sound. And for this, again, I will provide you a file that you can grab from GitHub repo. So inside the assets, I will create a folder called sounds. And here I'll just drag and drop that file. So I have added this sound. I don't know if you can hear it, but that's gonna be this sound. That's classic iOS notification sound. And here now we'd like to play it once we have the message. So that's gonna be inside this hook. We got the message, we add the shake class, and just before we update the state, and we could just say const sound, and we would like to import it. Now I'll just say import, I'll say notification sound from, is this correct? Okay, we can go into the assets, inside the sounds, and then notification .mp3, and we'll just import this. Now here we'll just say new audio, and we'll just pass the notification sound into it, and we'll just say sound.play, and that's gonna play this sound once there is a new message. So we could save and let's test it out now. So here I'll just say hello Jane, and here we can see we can hear the sound. So hey, and that's immediate as well. So whatever we just sent, both it shakes as well as we can hear that sound. So now here I just want to mention something. If we don't really add this line, what is going to happen is that there is going to be a lot of this event that has been listening from our socket, and whenever you send a new message, so you will hear that notification sound multiple times. So it'll be multiplied by the number of listeners that you have. That's why inside the cleanup we actually remove it. So here this line is really important, so that you are not listening for this event more than once. And now with this, I think we have completed our entire application. So we could save, and I would like to just commit all these changes, and then we'll go into the deployment part. So in case you want to see the commit workflow, so here I'll just add everything to this staging area. So here are all the changes that we have, and I will add it. And then we would like to just add, so I'll just add all of them. So stage all changes. Okay, now all of them are in this staging area. And what you see M is modified files, and the A that you see, they are added. So we're gonna go here and I'll just put my commit message. So I'll just say something like fourth part completed, and I'll just say socket. Now let's commit this, and we will now try to deploy this app. So now in this section, we would like to deploy our application, but we cannot just go ahead and drag and drop these files to the server. That's not gonna work. We need to set this up. So we're gonna go into the backend where we have this server.js. And here we need to do a couple of things. Now we're gonna get a variable, let's say const __ their name, and we'll say path.resolve, and this path is going to be coming from Node.js. Let's import it now. We'll say import path from path, and I'll just put it at the top. Now after our routes, we would like to have a middleware. So let's say app.use, we'll say express.static. So this is a static middleware that Express gives us, and this basically is used to serve static files such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, image files, sounds files that we had in our front-end application, and we'll be using this. So let's say path.join, and what this does, that it gives us the absolute path to the root folder. So we'll be using it. So let's say path.join __ their name, and we are gonna join this with the front end folder that we have. So we'll say slash frontend, so frontend slash dist. And now what is going on here is that we will go into this their name, which is the root, okay, and then slash frontend. Okay, now we are inside this, and we are gonna go into the dist folder, but we don't really have it, and this will be something when we try to build this front-end application, and that will be done in the server when we deploy this application. So now if we go into the front end, so cd front end, and if we say something like npm run build, Vite will build this front-end application for us, and it'll just put everything into this dist folder. And when we deploy our application, we typically build and bundle our front-end code for optimization and performance reasons. So this will be put into the dist folder, and we just use this express static middleware so that this will be served as static files. And then we will say any routes that is other than these. So we will say app.get. So we'll put a wildcard, and we will say we would like to have this request and response. So we're gonna have this callback function. So we'll say res.send file, and we will send this index HTML that we have in the front end folder. So let's say path.join, again underscore their name. So that's going to be double underscore their name. And then we could just have it as separated. So we're going to go into the front end, and then we're going to go into the dist, and then we will have this index.html. So now with this, we are able to run our front end from our server as well. Now let's save this file, and I think we'll understand what all this means in a second. We could delete this now, and we would like to go into the package.json. We would like to add a script. So let's say put a comment first. We'll have a start script that's going to be node backend server.js, and then we would like to have another script that's going to be building our application. So first we would like to use npm install. So that's going to install every package that is needed for our backend, because this is being running on the root. So that's going to take a look at the package.json file, and then we'll say npm install, but this time for front end. And here we could do something like cd into the front end and then run npm install, but instead we can say -- prefix front end folder. So this says go into the front end folder and run this npm install. And then once this has been completed, now we would like to build our front end application. So npm run build, and we would like to run this again inside this folder. So we'll say prefix front end. And now if we save this, and let's just try to build our application now. So I'll say cd into the root, and we'll say npm run build. Now this is going to install every package for our backend, for front end, and it's going to build our front end application. Now we already have these packages in our workspace, but when we deploy our code, we are not going to have these node modules in the server. So we need to first install them and then build our application. And now everything looks like has been completed successfully. If we go into the front end folder, here we can see there is this dist folder has been created, and it has this index.html, and that's going to be having our JavaScript code in the bundle. Now if we say npm, I think it was start, right? npm start. Oops, so from here, npm start. And now we could visit our server. Let's go and test it out. So now if we visit localhost 3000, it is not going to work because our client is not running on this port anymore. It is running on 5000. So both our client and server now is running on this port. And the reason is, here in the server.js file, we said that any route that are except from these, can you just render the index.html that is under this front end and dist folder? And that's what is going to happen in our backend as well. So now we could still log in. I'll say Bobdo from 1 to 6. So we could still log in, send our fetch requests, send messages, online status, and every real-time communication works. And now the difference is we are able to connect our front-end application from our server just because of that express static middleware and that path. Now with that in mind, we can go ahead and try to deploy this app, and for this we'll be using render. So go into the render.com and create an account for free if you don't already have it. Now we would like to go into the dashboard, and even before we try to deploy this app, we need to have a GitHub repo. So I will create it and come back to the video. So here I have created a repo called MERN chat app, and I would like to just put my latest changes. I'll just say git add all and git commit -m, and I'll say deployment. And now I would like to copy this line, and I'll just paste it into my terminal. So I'll just paste it, and that's gonna push my code to my GitHub repo. So now I just refresh this, and here's our code, and we would like to just deploy this. So this is the one that I have deployed for demo purposes. Now I will create a new one, web service, and we will say build and deploy from a Git repo. Let's say next. And here you need to connect to your GitHub account. So here it says MERN chat app. I'll say connect. And for this, I'll just say chat app production, and or maybe I'll just say YouTube. Then here, this is my branch name, which is master. In your case, that could be main, so don't touch it. Just leave it as it is. Now, the build command that we had was npm run build, and then start command was npm run start or npm start. That's the same thing. Now we could use the free tier. The only problem is, so free instances spin down after periods of inactivity, and that means for the first time when you visit your app, that's going to be a bit slow, but that's okay as long as it is free for side projects. Now, we don't need to forget our environment variables, and we're going to go and take all of them one by one. So here I will take these environment variables and just paste them one by one. So here I'll just take the JWT secret and pass it as a key, and then now we'll add the value. So I will copy the value, and then again come back to here, paste it, and you'd like to add another one. So that's going to be MongoDB URI. I will copy it, paste it, and then we are going to grab the value and then just paste it. And lastly, we would like to get the port, and that's going to be 5000. And here, okay, so the last one is going to be node env. So where did we use this? Okay, so when we use this generate token, we said that's going to be secure if it is not development. So we would like to just make it as production. So here I'll just say it was node underscore env. So node env, and I'll say that's going to be production. And now let's make this bigger, and let's say create a web service. So deployment has been started. Now I think that's going to take about 1 or 2 minutes, and once it's done, I'll be right back. So I got an error for some reason that says vid not found and build failed. I'll just try to manual deploy this again. So I'll say deploy latest commit. So it failed again, and I think the reason is if we go under this environment is because of this node env is equal to production. So for now, let's just delete this. And since this is production, it doesn't install the dev dependency packages, and our vid is under the dev dependency. That's why it cannot find this when it tries to run this npm build. So let's try to just deploy this again. So we have deleted that node env field, and let's say manual deploy with this latest commit again. And let's see if this time it's gonna work or not. So build was successful. Now it is trying to deploy this, and again it's gonna take a bit time, so let's just wait for it. And here we go. Now your service is live, connected to MongoDB, and server is running on this port. Now let's try to visit it. It's gonna be on this URL. Let's click it. So here we have, this is our application. Now it is live. Let's try to log in. So now we are logged in, and we can fetch the users from our database. But here I think we are gonna have errors on Scikit.io. So let's say I'll just open up another tab. So here I just put them side by side. I will put this link. From here I'll try to log in. So I will go with Daisy or maybe Jane Doe from 1 to 6. And now we are logged in, but Scikit.io is not gonna work. Now we cannot see the online status, and we will not be able to see the messages. Okay, it is not real time, and it is because in our code base we say that. So let's go under the context. So we are trying to connect to this route, but we would like to just change it to our URL because there is not localhost running anymore. So I will take this URL from our application and then replace it here. And if we just save this file, we just need to deploy this again. So I'll put a commit. So I'll say git add all git commit scikit URL updated. And if we just git push this, and hopefully render will try to just deploy this. Now let's go and test it out if it is going to deploy it. So sometimes it doesn't do, and normally it should just automatically deploy that. So I will go into the here. Okay, it's deploying as you can see here. So whenever you add new commit, it is gonna see that from your GitHub account and it's gonna try to deploy that. So let's wait for logs and hopefully that's gonna be successfully deployed. Okay, so I clicked to this events and it says deploy is live, and let's again check for this. I will refresh this page and I will just test them out. So I put them side by side. Now I will refresh on both pages and here we can see now we have the online status, and let's test it out, the real-time messages. And here we can see, here is the message and we got the notification sound. And if we just send another one, it just works as expected. So I think that's gonna be it for this course. I hope you were able to follow along until here and you were able to learn these concepts that we have covered in this course. Now you could extend this chat app by adding a lot of different features, such as sending images as messages and having this seen and unseen messages in just like WhatsApp. And for these features, I have dedicated videos on the channel. Feel free to check them out. And if you have any questions, just come and ask in our Discord server. With that being said, I think I'll wrap up this video here. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.